Yeah.
Why don't you talk to me about what you do? Because I actually don't really understand. I know you have training and education in environmental issues, or what's your background?
Well, I have a master's degree in sustainability.
Okay.
But within that, what I've specialized in is sustainability leadership and helping people develop an interconnected worldview. The primary way that I help people think about sustainability is to help them understand that the world is an interconnected system.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of my work is based on systems thinking and complexity science, which are essentially the sciences of how everything is connected. And the earth and society and the economy altogether are one big interconnected system. And what that means is that there's a discrepancy between what we tend to think about and make decisions about,
Mm-hmm.
and then what we actually affect.
Oh yeah, makes sense.
So we make decisions locally, but we actually have effects that happen globally. And the tricky thing about sustainability right now is that there are a lot of, every Fortune 500 company has a sustainability department at this point, or most of them do.
Mm-hmm.
But often those departments are way out at the edge of the organization and don't necessarily affect the way that the core of the business actually operates. And for us to really move towards sustainability, it needs to be a lens that we use for how we operate. So every business, the whole C-suite, the CEO, all the people, the managers, everybody has got to have sustainability as a lens to help them make decisions. It can't just be way out on the edge of the organization. So in that way, what I think that we really need and what I help people do is what I call sustainability leadership development, which helps them understand that the world is interconnected, and that when they're creating products or services, or when they are involved in manufacturing processes in some way, they can't just think of this, they actually have to think of what else it's going to affect.
Mm-hmm. So when you say they have to think of these other things, is that just a moral reason, or are there economic reasons they need to think bigger? Or, how do you make the case that they even should adopt a more interconnected world?
So, short answer, it's very practical to move towards sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
It's very economic. I think that we have actually gone in the wrong direction to think about it as only moral. It is moral, but it's not. It shouldn't be that you think of yourself as a good person if you're sustainable. It's actually just intelligent. So as a simple example, let's imagine a company that has a big fishing fleet, and they're fishing so much that they're depleting the fish stocks, and the fish stocks are collapsing. Mm-hmm. And let's say there's proposed government regulation, and they're like, no, we don't want government regulation because our next quarter profits will go down.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, what they're doing is they're trading immediate profits against the possibility of future profits.
Sure.
So is that profit? Because they're not going to have the fish in the future. The fish are going to be gone.
But that's an easy example. What about, say, a service that's not so direct?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is that way.
Okay.
That's an easy example. I use it because it's easy to understand.
Right.
But everything is that way.
Okay.
If we think of an issue that's like the big complex issue of our time, which is climate change,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of the same thing. Like, you can only use so much of it before things go bad, just like the fish.
Sure.
You can dump so much carbon into the atmosphere before things go bad,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's going to have negative ramifications for us, including negative economic ramifications.
Right.
So the economy is entirely dependent on the environment.
Mm-hmm. What's the biggest roadblock that you run into? Is it that kind of short-term profit mindset, or?
The biggest roadblock is worldview.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't really believe that we can affect the world. We kind of, imagine you moved to America, the United States of America in 1800, and you went out into the middle of the woods somewhere. It wouldn't matter what you did. You could chop down every tree in sight, you could light all the fires, you could do everything, and you could not affect the world. We tend to imagine ourselves within an arena, like that the world is kind of an arena, and that the arena doesn't change, and that whatever we do within it is whatever we do, and that's our business. We haven't really shifted to the reality that we do, in fact, affect the world. In fact, scientists are now referring to this era as the Anthropocene. In other words, people have the greatest effect on how the world processes, all the natural processes are working. So in terms of how water moves around, how soil moves around, what's happening to the air, it's people who have the biggest effect. And it's not necessarily that you, as an individual, have the biggest effect, but there's 7 billion of us. And so altogether, in aggregate, we have a gigantic effect. And so partly it's just a matter of imagination, to have this more interconnected worldview. If you have one plastic bottle, it's not a big deal.
Right.
But you have to be able to multiply the plastic bottle by 7 billion people every day drinking water, or however much, water bottles, like just the untold mountains of plastic water bottles. And that's just obviously one example.
Right.
But it's everything, right? It's how much carbon we're putting into the air, how many forests we're taking down. Everything is amplified to a gigantic degree, but we haven't shifted our understanding of how the world works to take that into account, and we haven't shifted our decision-making processes to take that into account, to take that the fact into account that we can affect the whole world, and are. So it's also not just climate change. Deforestation and habitat loss for various other reasons. Species are going extinct at a rate about 1,000 times more than normal because of human activities. Scientists are referring to it as an extinction event, along with the other great extinction events in history.
Like the dinosaurs?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Only it's happening at lightning speed.
Oh, okay.
Because we are having such a great and very negative effect on the world. But I think the thing is that often when people focus on the things that are going wrong, polar bears are in danger, tigers are in danger, blah, 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 people just feel bad. And that's okay, a little bit, because that's very sad.
Right.
But what I really want people to do is make the connection that I was talking about before, which is you're thinking about making decisions here, but you're actually affecting this much, so that we can start to just shift how we operate. It's not enough to feel bad.
Right.
We actually have to change what we do. And we have to use that as a criterion for how we make those changes.
So can you give an example of like what you would do for, say, a business that hasn't adopted like a worldview or an interconnected view, or
Sure.
Because it just sounds a little vague. I'm just wondering,
Sure.
like what exactly?
What I do is leadership development. So in the same way that any other leadership development program, mine just focuses on systems and sustainability. So what I would do is programs that help people actually make the connections between their actions and the actual big picture effects. And I have created a model, a framework that helps people look at whatever they're up to and just ask the questions to see what else is it going to affect. Are those effects in line with our values? Are those effects in line with our mission and purpose as a company? So that they can really look at it and see if it's true. Because a lot of what happens these days is effects happen that companies don't necessarily want.
Right.
It's just how the system works.
Sure.
So, as I mentioned earlier, what happens often is there will be a sustainability department that will be disconnected from the core decision-making processes of the business. And then there will be maybe even a conflict between that department and other departments because they're like, let's be more sustainable.
Right.
And those departments, because they're still thinking with an old worldview where they're thinking only about quarterly profit instead of sort of what we might call sustainable profit,
Sure.
they won't see the value of what the sustainability department is trying to offer.
Right.
So what I help people do is develop this new worldview so that they actually could see that value, so that there could be embedded throughout an organization a sustainability or a systems lens. And so I do that through leadership development programs, helping both to educate but also to provide a framework by which people can sort of do this investigation and make these decisions themselves, even when I'm not around.
But it sounds like you also help them do some of the qualitative analysis about, like, here are things that you're actually impacting, like, that you haven't thought of before.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And I had another question that came from that, but so what about, like, businesses that don't have a sustainability program of any kind? Like, do you think that it seems like more and more people are looking for that, and that there is some value in, even in terms of developing business, for them to have that slant or expertise or.
We're definitely in the wild, wild west period of sustainability. So there's all different kinds of approaches to sustainability that different size businesses have, and so on. For sure, though, there are markets to be captured if you have a more sustainable product or service. So especially if you're a leader, if you're one of the first ones to offer a sustainable product or service, people are really looking for it.
Right.
And so I certainly can help organizations figure out how to think about that and how to move towards sustainability in that basic way. That's what I've done a lot in the past, is helped organizations think through that kind of thing. What would sustainable processes look like? What would sustainable choices be? That sort of thing. Nowadays, I'm just more focused on I'm homing in on helping people develop sustainability leadership,
Right.
so that they have that decision-making process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. All right. So how do people find out more about you? Where are you at?
They can find me at skybrookgroup.com.
Okay. Dylan's work is very important. Please check him out. And thanks for your time.
Thank you.